Friday, which means it's time for some WNBA today here on SportsGrid TV. And it is my pleasure, Kasey Hudson, to talk with you about the WNBA playoffs. No, not just the playoffs. Excuse me, how rude. The finals. And what a matchup this has been between the Liberty and the Lynx. It was anticipated to be action-packed, and let's just say it has not disappointed. We've had friend of the show, Dexter Henry, on WNBA today, running through what he's seen on the ground when it comes to the Liberty. A tough game one for them, so we had a chance to talk with him. We had a chance to talk with Coach a few weeks back. A lot of anticipation of how this series is going to wrap up and who will be hoisting the trophy at the end. But we got to tap back to where we were last Friday, walk you guys through what might happen tonight, and of course we've got Coach joining us later to give you the best odds, lines, and angles as we get ready for more WNBA fun. So where do we stand thus far? Well, if you joined us last week, we're preparing for a massive game two, and when we got a chance to talk to Dexter Henry, he was talking about the fact that Stewart wasn't playing her best game, and when an athlete knows that they are not rising to their typical standard and occasion, we can anticipate a pretty large performance out of them. Game two went down on Sunday at 3 o'clock. Yeah, I know, that weird time that they tend to continue to have, but the Liberty came out on top 80-66 over the Lynx. But what were some of the key factors to this victory for the New York Liberty? First and foremost, it was the fact that we saw a defense that just was very wavering in that first game. They were probably put on their heels a lot. They had some trouble adjusting. They were basically outpaced in most aspects of the game versus the Lynx, and that's game one, okay? So when we talk about game two, we're talking about the defense coming back to life. Also, the most important factor in that is containing the key point makers for the Lynx. I mean, Collier was held to 16 points, and we know how much the team relies on her action-packed play. But then it was Smith with 16, and then Courtney Williams, remember Miss Ice in her veins, 15 points. Now, before things come off a little too dramatic, yes, we were calling her ice in the veins. Yes, she had this monstrous performance in game one. But most importantly, her role is not that particular 15 to 20 point scorer. No, she helps out defensively. She helps serve up the ball to her teammates. But she had that great performance. And I think the expectation was, okay, she has all the grounds to build off of this. Maybe hit another 15, 16, 17 point performance. So her not breaking out of 15 is not all that surprising. But it's the containing of Collier. Now, we know that she can help out defensively. We know she's a strong two-way player, but most importantly, the Liberty were all over her, and they made sure that they kept her as contained as possible so that they can not only get control of this game, but walk away tying the series. Now, talking back to what Dexter Henry was talking about in Brianna Stewart's performance in game one, and we expected that she was going to come out a lot more fiery. Well, for starters, when we were looking at best bets and angles for that game too, Stewart was sitting at under 19 points, and I remember talking to Dexter about it and being like, is this okay for her? Like, we know that she's a natural 20-point scorer, but are the books indicating that she may not reach that? Are the books indicating that Minnesota might have her number when it comes to locking her down or minimizing her role? That was not the case, because game two, not only did she contribute 21 points, hitting the over on the 19 of the over-under total that was distributed to her, no. She also had a record 7 steals in game two. So she's leveled up tremendously, not only packing on the points, but showing up defensively for her team, and that was exactly what we talked about last week on WNBA Today, the fact that she had to be that Swiss Army knife for her team that we've seen her be time and time again. And yes, it's a lot of pressure to have the entire team on your shoulders, but that's what it comes down to in these post-game runs. It's your star players that have to show up, and Stewart showed up. But it doesn't stop there for the Liberty. Hamilton came in hot, adding 20 points into the mix of Brianna Stewart's massive performance, helping them get to that 80-66. As for other key stoppers in this victory for the New York Liberty, running through this quick matchup, you also have Ionescu, 15 points, but why it's important to point out where she's at on the charts is because she's come in the most clutch moments, and anybody who watched the game on Wednesday knows exactly what I'm talking about. But before we get ahead ourselves and get over to game three, I'm just going to reiterate the fact that Collier was held to the 16 points, Carlton held to 8 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists, Smith at the 14, Williams at the 15, and then so on and so forth. So they were just completely leveled out, which also touches back on when we were talking about the total with Dexter Henry as well as Coach, because we've seen the total go over because of some of the big plays that were coming in that fourth quarter. So just talk about checking the boxes all around. The Liberty were able to make that game entirely their own, hence leveling out the series, making it 1-1. Now, where does that put us for game three and a crucial game four tonight? Game three, you have a game that started out all Minnesota. And of course, y'all know me. I was very excited to see Minnesota come out strong. I was very excited to see McBride making that game entirely her own. I mean, I thought that this was a shoo-in for Minnesota to take back the series lead and break that tie. But it was McBride all the way in the first half of Game 3, which made me genuinely think this was a lockdown. This was done. It was over with. Halftime goes in. Well, it's all about the adjustments. It's all about your ability to have those rebounds. And then not only does Breanna Stewart come back in the mix, continuing to show up for her team, but it's Sabrina Ionescu. So Breanna Stewart put up 30 points, 11 rebounds, and 1 assist. Talk about taking the next step in the next stride after a monster Game 2, after falling short in Game 1 to her own personal standard. But why I got that mixed up for a second mentioning Sabrina Ionescu, because it's what she did with less than a second left on the clock. I'm talking about fourth quarter action being the most intense it's ever been. A key three-pointer to give the New York Liberty the lead, and then the clock runs out and they secure Game 3, taking the series lead 2-1. So now the Liberty are staring down the trophy, staring down the opportunity to be champions. And we've talked about it so much here on WNBA today, what Sabrina Ionescu brings to the table. She might not be a 20-point person every single night. She doesn't have to be. It's those key moments that she has the ability to find the net, and she did that in such a crucial moment. I mean, everybody paused on the court when that play happened because we weren't even sure if the clock genuinely had 1 second left on it, and that's exactly what it was. 1 second of play. As soon as they decided that was clear, it was a wrap for the Liberty, taking an 80-77 victory over the Minnesota Lynx. So where does that put us for tonight's matchup? Well, most importantly, we've got a crucial Game 4 on the books, because this could be something that the Liberty walk away with, and like I mentioned, staring down that trophy and then hoisting that trophy. So what we're going to talk about coming up here on WNBA today is going to be whether or not we can see another performance from Stewart, whether or not we're going to see more clutch plays from Ionescu, but who else needs to get involved when it comes to the WNBA, as well as the Liberty being able to secure a W here. Well, heading into tonight's matchup, we're looking at a 3.5 spread. The total sitting at 159. Now, when the total was sitting at 164 and 170 for the previous games in the postgame, that's where we've talked mostly with Dexter as well as Coach about, do we love these numbers? When the competition gets really high, when we're looking at, I don't know, not only the game being on the line, but the series being on the line, these totals tend to kind of go down the rabbit hole. So that 159 feels a little low in my personal opinion, because seeing how things heated up on Wednesday, I mean, Minnesota was completely in control. By the time that the first quarter was wrapping up, they were leading 23-11 over the New York Liberty. So the way that they had to climb back into the game, the way that they just go point for point versus one another, this 159 feels really low, because we already thought 164 was low when the competition was high. So that's one of my personal opinions when it comes to the spread and the total. Now, when it comes to the spread, as close as I feel like this Game 4 is going to be, I mean, it's the trophy on the line for Minnesota. So this spread actually looks quite favorable in my personal opinion. You've got the Liberty being favored here at the -3.5. As for your playmakers, and we'll get all of this and more, as well as other perspectives when Coach joins us here on WNBA today, but they have Collier favorably hitting over 20.5 points. I don't hate this, because she was able to bounce back from Game 2 into Game 3 and go right back to where she sits typically in her normal totals. Collier wrapped up Game 3 with a total of 22 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 assists. So again, with the level of intensity that this Game 4 is going to mean, I can see Collier hitting that over 20.5. For me, it's going to be McBride and Williams that we're going to take a closer look at, but don't go anywhere, because we get Coach's expertise on the other side of the break coming up here. And I want to know if he's feeling like the Lynx are going to be able to tie this thing up, or if the Liberty are going to come out on top. So plenty to get to here on WNBA today on SportsGrid TV. We've got a quick break, and don't forget to follow SportsGrid over on X and Twitter. That's at SportsGrid. But most importantly, join us on the other side of this quick break.
That kid on the two-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else. and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
You are watching WNBA today here on SportsGrid TV as we get you ready for Game 4. Just ran through Game 2, caught you up on Game 3, especially the electrifying clutch moment by Sabrina Ionescu. But most importantly, we got to get a different perspective in here for this massive Game 4 that we have ahead. So joining me here on WNBA today is one of our faves. It's going to be Coach James Young to get his perspective. And I know a lot of New York fans that are very excited right now. I know a lot of New York fans that feel like this is in the bag. It is done. Game 4 is already behind them. Brianna Stewart's going to go off again. Ionescu's going to be clutch again. But Coach, tell me what you think of the finals thus far and your anticipation for tonight.
Kasey, great to be on with you as always. Listen, folks, this is a Liberty team that's been to the WNBA Finals 5 times before this. They've never won it. So we can sit here and be, confident as Liberty fans. And obviously, me being a New York City guy and been watching this team since Rebecca Lobo, Kim Hampton, Teresa Weatherspoon. I remember that half-court shot she made, three-quarter shot in '99 against the Houston Comets. I've been around for all of it. Even though I think they're going to win, I'm still on pins and needles because you can always say this, Kasey, the hardest game to win in a series is the last one.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with that, especially from an NHL perspective, because I've seen my team almost get swept, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we're alive. We have a pulse. So Minnesota has to find a pulse tonight. We've seen different ways the Liberty have found to contain them and kind of control the game, especially Game 2. They were able to kind of minimize and limit Collier more than we've seen out of most competitions, but then she came back to life in Game 3. It looked like it was Minnesota for that entire first half. I mean, just owning the game, outscoring the Liberty, and then before you know it, they match pace in the second half, and Ionescu, somebody that I've been high on this entire season, comes in clutch for her team, a second left on the clock. So what do we anticipate for tonight? Because I know that between you and I and me and Dexter, we've talked a number of times about where these totals can go or what the best angle is coming into these tough matchups. I'm seeing the spread going between 2.5 and 3.5, and most importantly, it's this total of 159. Now, we saw the total kind of hang there on Game 2, but obviously get blown up a bit in Game 3. So what are we seeing initially for these numbers?
Well, listen, when you get to this elimination game, Case, everything gets thrown out the window. Like all your strategies, everything is going to be all hands on deck. So first things first, you got to look at is the superstars, right? Who's going to be that one that shows up or one that shows up? Obviously, we talked about Nafisha Collier and how well you just said she played. She took 11 shots in the first half of game number 3. So I expect, I'm running my offense through someone like Nafisha Collier. Kayla McBride, her best shooting performance in the playoffs in a couple of games, especially hitting 3 threes in the first half. So when you're looking at it, is this. If you are Minnesota, you're going to want to try and come out aggressive early. So I didn't even put it as one of my best bets, but I think Minnesota on the money line in the first quarter could be a play. Because if I'm sure I got to play with the lead, right? I got to play with the lead. The Liberty's a team that starts to make their run in the second half, particularly in their fourth quarter, as they tighten up the screws. So Minnesota early in this game is what you want to watch for because remember, game number 1, Liberty had a huge lead and blew it. They're not blowing this again. So to me, if you're Minnesota, play with the lead. Minnesota first quarter, they should jump off to a good start at home.
I actually love that a lot because you and I have talked about it on here where there's been a few games where I took Minnesota in that first quarter and the fourth quarter because their ability to open up and strong fast has been pretty consistent throughout the regular season and somewhat throughout the postseason. But most importantly, their ability to close in the preseason or in the regular season was something I was consistently seeing. I'm a big fan of patterns, so I love that for an approach tonight, especially because, like you said, elimination, everything is on the line here. They know they have to get that fast start, but most importantly, they know that they cannot get the fast start and then give up all of that success and progression that they make in the first half. So what adjustments do you think Minnesota has to make here? Because it's not like we haven't seen a defensively sound game yet. They were kind of talked about as one of the most defensively better teams out there, and we haven't particularly seen all of that quite yet, or are the Liberty just outplaying them at this point?
You know what's the amazing thing about this, Kasey, is if you really think about the last 2 games for the Liberty, right? Games number 2 and 3. Yes, and then we'll get to Sab and her performance late in that game. But it was Benangelini Hamilton with 20 points in game number 2 when she had not scored never more than, I think, 10 points in a playoff game. And then it's Leona Fibic, which had a big game in game number 3. So it's one of those things where the ancillary players from New York are giving them big lifts. So if you are Cheryl Reed, do you go back to the well again and say, okay, I got to try and contain Stewie and Seb early on? So to me, I still think if you're the Liberty, you lean on some of the ancillary players. Leona Fibic in her play, especially the fact that she may be a rookie. She's 24 years old, Kasey. So this is not some kid who just came off the street to play. This lady's been playing ball at a high level for a long time. So I look at Fibic for 10-plus points. I look for Sab to get those 2.5 made threes because I think those last 2 threes were huge and maybe our confidence gets unlocked. Jonquel Jones is always the X factor with the Liberty. I think this is going to be a really good game. I'm going to go on the flip side here. If this game starts off in the way I think it's going to be, which is really close to the vest, if they don't move that total, you may want to look under because you're going to want to slow this game down, and all the stars, Kasey, are going to play big minutes. And remember, only 1 day in these 2 games. So look for big minutes out of the stars. The big stars for both teams, I think they played all 35 minutes plus. A lot of minutes for the stars tonight.
Oh, I love that perspective. And that's definitely something that I was building up to when I was asking, where do we go with this total? Because sometimes you just have to steer clear of it because, like you mentioned, in games like this, it can just be any card that's pulled on the night. But both teams are going to need their stars to come through. And we've seen how both teams have performed when Collier doesn't get her numbers and Stewart doesn't get her numbers and Ionescu comes out early due to injury. So it's going to be massive for these teams to have their stars show up tonight and be able to contribute the points, the rebounds, and the assists that we are so used to seeing. But as Coach alluded to, we do have to give a lot of love and a lot of flowers to Sabrina Ionescu for not just being clutch, but what she has done for the Liberty thus far throughout the postseason. So more to get to. We got another break coming up here, and then, of course, some best bets to leave you guys with as we prepare for Game 4 going on tonight. So don't go anywhere. Stick with us here on SportsGrid.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else. And they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into WNBA Today here on SportsGrid TV. Kasey Hudson getting you ready for Game 4, but I cannot do it alone. If you joined us for the previous segment, you got the wise words of Coach James Young sticking with us here on WNBA Today because we got to talk about some players to watch, and plus we got to get a little betting card going because Game 4 was going to be a wild roller coaster. I was telling Coach during the break, my heart is getting a little faint here because if you guys have hung out with us here on SportsGrid TV for WNBA Today, you know that I've been rooting and rallying so hard behind Minnesota. So if this slips out of their fingertips tonight, everybody please just check on me just a little bit. Just a little bit. But, Coach, you started running us through some of the players, and obviously you made the keynote to say the stars have to be the stars tonight, which I couldn't agree more. We've seen these teams kind of slide off a little bit when their key players are contained or do not show up. So where are you edging when it comes to looking at best bets for tonight? And most importantly, who are your stars on your betting card?
Well, if people could kind of go with this, I've been on this kid for a long time, and that's Leona Fimic. Leona's prop is get 10-plus points at minus 110. And you're saying to yourself, well, the coach, this girl only scored 6.7 points per game. But, folks, how about the fact that she has gone 10-plus points in 4 out of her last 5 games? She's played critical moments, and she's played 28 minutes plus. They need her for her defense, but also her ability to make threes. Her three-point prop, 2+ made threes, I think it was at minus 162. I didn't like it, so I figured if she's going to get 6 from 3, she gets 4 more. Leona Fimic, 10-plus points. Next, we're going to go to Sabrina Ionescu. I've been, people know that I've known this kid for a while. I saw this kid practice when she was at Oregon. And this is a player that I really think people forgot how great of a player she was, particularly at Oregon, because she got robbed of her chance to win a national championship because of the COVID outbreak and the fact that they did not have an NCAA tournament her senior year. But Sab to make over 2.5 made threes. I think those last 2 threes were big for her. If you look at it, just about the attempts, 8, 5, 9, 8. In this, 8 was the last game versus Las Vegas. So she's going to get the attempts, and she's not afraid to have the ball in her hands. I like her to go over 2.5 made threes at minus 146. As with regards to the game case, I said take the Liberty at minus 158. It's now minus 162. Maybe too rich for people's blood, but I can't mess around with the points with it being 3.5 because this could easily be a 1, 2, or a 3-point win for the Liberty, kind of like the last game at 3.5-point favorite to win by 3. So I think you let the game play live. If they're losing, then jump on the Liberty, because I think I said to you during the commercial break, the only way I think Minnesota wins is a blowout. If it's close, it's New York. So if the game is close, particularly in the first half, jump on the Liberty Live. As long as you get under minus 150, they steal it and they win the WNBA championship tonight.
Oof, those are tough words for me, Coach, but I can't entirely disagree. I just have to see what happens in Game 4. Now, before we wrap up here on WNBA today, and even though your betting card just ever so slightly diminish some of my hope, I'm going to ask you this. What are some underdogs or some players that are not the key players, the star players, the ones we're always talking about, that fans should be keeping an eye on? And regardless of the result tonight, probably players that we'll continue to watch in the upcoming season to make an impact.
Well, listen, I think when you look at a team like Minnesota, you got to look at, people that can knock down shots. This is a team that usually shoots the ball really well from three, but it struggles. So I'm looking at Bridget Carleton, over 1.5 made threes at minus 188. It's a lot of it. So if you can find her to make 3+ threes, that could be something, because I think they're going to have to be able to stretch the floor and knock down threes. Search around. Right now, Carleton is at plus 154 to make 3+ made threes. I think she's got to be a key here. McBride shot the ball better in game number 3, making, I think, 3 threes. So even her at 3+ made threes. McBride, Carleton, if you think that Minnesota's going to win, those two have to knock down shots. It's those two shooting that opens the floor for a big feast, and Nafisha Kylie do her work. So if you like Minnesota, throw in McBride, throw in Carleton, 3+ made threes each. I think that will be the key for them to get this back to New York for Game 5.
Let's do it, Minnesota. Open up the floor for Collier. Let her go off, and then come in hot with the assist. Courtney Williams, I just told the world how much you go hard in the paint. Dexter Henry just said that you have ice in your veins. I want to see a wild Game 4. Do not go to home until that final whistle blows. Most importantly, Coach, thank you so much for joining us here on WNBA today. Everyone, we've got more coverage coming to you at Game Time Decisions, talking about Game 4 going down tonight. But as for WNBA today, it is a wrap for us here on SportsGrid TV. We will catch you guys next Friday.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Derek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best 2 ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern.